If you want to add some truly amazing and visually appealing animations to your web page, then this video is definitely for you. In this video, I'm mainly going to show you how we can add cross-document transitions using the View Transition API when navigating from one page to another. And not just in classic multi-page apps, but also how we can add amazing eye-catching animations in single-page applications. You'll see all of that in today's video. The View Transition API can be your next animation partner, not only for classic or single-page animations, but for any kind of interaction you might imagine. To help you understand the View Transition API, I've brought a simple example for you, and here you can see a simple interface. There are 4 cards, and when you click on a card, the image enlarges and moves to another page. This is the to.html page, and the previous page was from HTML, and both pages share a style sheet. So if I show you the code, you'll see that the from HTML page has style.css. The to.html page also has a style.css, and this is that style.css file. Today we'll mainly work in style.css because the View Transition API is essentially a JavaScript API, but we can control it with CSS as well. And there are 2 very important aspects to the View Transition API. One is cross-document transition, meaning when I click here and go from one page to another, that means from one document to another document, since it's called a cross-document transition. In that case, the View Transition works in one way. The other is single page. In today's modern world, we build single page applications. So if there's an interaction like that, you can also use the View Transition API for transitions between views. For example, here's a button called New Story. If I click here, a new card appears. There's a JavaScript snippet written for this, which I'll come back to later when I discuss single page transitions. Right now, it's a simple DOM interaction. A new card appears when you click. If I want, I can also use the View Transition API to show a beautiful, smooth transition for this. So first, let's try to understand cross-document transitions. Okay? To use the View Transition API, I've come to style.css file. And for cross-document transitions, we first need to enable the View Transition API in our document. For that, I'm writing View Transition and Navigation Auto. That's all I've written, nothing else. Now, if we go here, and if I reload, then now here, I'm keeping the browser's DevTools open at the same time because we'll need this continuously. So if I go to this page now, you can already see that a crossfade is happening. And if I go back to the previous page again, another crossfade is happening. You can see it, right? Maybe it seems very fast if that's the case. So if you want to slow this down a bit, we can use the browser's DevTools to debug it. To turn on the debug mode, we'll click on this triple dot, then go to More Tools, and there we'll enable the Animation tab. There, as you can see, by default, 100% is selected. This is the speed of the View Transition, meaning the speed at which the transition is happening. If I reduce this speed to 10%, it will slow down. For example, now I've done it, see? Now you can clearly see the crossfade happening beautifully, right? So it's such a simple thing. And just because of writing 3 lines, what I've been given by default wasn't natively possible in cross-document before. So now with just this 1 line, we can enable cross-document transitions on a web page. All right, now the thing I want to show you is about the cross-document transition you just saw. There are 2 very important points here. You might think that you are going from a from page to a to page. If the to page is another website that you own and you also enable the View Transition API on that website, you might think that the transition will also occur when navigating to that page. But actually, that's not the case. It works within a single origin. That's the very first point to note. Another thing is, we also saw that the transition doesn't only happen when we click on the navigation. Even if we press the simple browser's back or forward buttons, the transition still occurs. So far, the transition we've seen is a very boring, simple animation. Now, I want to make it a bit more advanced and interesting. I need to select individual elements separately. For example, let's say we have a section here called My Stories on this front page. If I inspect it, you'll see that My Stories has an identifier. See the title, right? And if I go to the corresponding detail page for this section, there is the title of that page as well, displayed in a similar way. If I go here, you'll see that I've also given this one an identifier title. Suppose you want to animate this specific title and move it over there. That means when the cross-document transition happens, this title will ultimately transition and become the title on the next page. If you want to do that, then first of all, I'll select this element. Since both pages have the same identifier for the title, I can simply select it in CSS. Like this, right? If you have 2 different identifiers on 2 pages, there's no problem. You can select them with a comma, no problem at all. So I selected the title. And to apply this animation, I'm going to use a property called view transition name. I'll give this transition a name, view transition name, meaning you're telling the API that you've uniquely identified an element for it, and it should handle the transition for this element separately. So that's exactly what will happen. Now you can name this whatever you like. Here I've named it title, but this title and that title don't have to match. You can give it any name you want, okay? You can even call it name, so that's fine. Just by doing this simple task, see how much improvement there is. If I cross document here now, notice how my title moves down. If I slow the speed again, notice this, just take a look, all right? Look at that title, see, it's not just working forward, it's also working backward, and the title is transitioning in beautifully. Clear? Now, there's something else I want to show you. See, you can actually control here just how much of your animation you want. Yes, so in this particular case, what I'm actually doing is just writing a selector. Then after that, I'll explain it. View transition group. And here I'm putting a star. Then I'm writing animation duration, let's say 0.5 seconds. Okay. When I do this, simply the animation that I'm creating now follows my specified time. That means it's following 0.5 seconds exactly as I said it. Now, the question is, where did I get this thing from exactly? While doing this, I will now explain to you in more depth. I will carefully explain the important details of the View Transition API. Now, let me show you how. The thing is very simple. Please listen carefully. It's absolutely clear. Just notice that there's a pause button here. I'm clicking this pause button. I've paused the animation. Okay. Now, what I'll do is just navigate this. Okay. So what did I do? Look, from here, navigation has already taken place. It has become 2.html. My DOM has also been updated here, but I've just navigated. Yet it hasn't appeared on my screen because I've paused the animation. How is this happening? This new DOM we are seeing here is actually the DOM for the two-page view. So naturally, we should see the two-page interface here, but that's not happening. The reason is, if you look above, you'll notice something new has appeared, view transition. That's basically overlaid across the entire screen. If we do a bit of debugging inside it, we'll see two things. One is the view transition group root. The other is the view transition group title. Since we've given a new name called title, it created a separate group for that, and the entire root which previously crossfaded the whole document is also present. So what I've done here is use the selector from this point. Clear? So this selector, which is the view transition group root, this refers to the entire page. So if I add root, title, and any other names in the future, all of them will keep coming in this way and the root will remain by default. Since I have selected all of these using a star, that's why I have set the animation duration for all the animations here to 0.5 seconds. So in that way, this selector basically it's here. From what we've understood so far, you should already be feeling quite confident. I'll play it again so the animation finishes and then I'll pause it again. Now we'll try to understand it a bit more in depth. I played it and ultimately I pressed here. When I press, you see if I want, I can control this thing like this with the animation. I can debug, see how nicely I'm able to debug. So I hope you understand this as well. And if we open it here now, we will see that look, view, transition, group root. Yes. And here, see, I had put a star. Now, if I take this view transition group root that I just gave a moment ago, what I'm going to do is, as you can see, copy that exact thing. And this, instead of using star in the select, I can choose to select only the root if I want. And for example, what does root mean? The crossfade that's happening, the entire upper part there, I'm setting the animation to none, meaning that no animation at all will be applied. Now, if I just debug this a bit, I'll pause again and then apply it once more. Okay. Notice carefully. Now it just appears instantly. But notice the title hasn't appeared yet. See, this My Stories is actually from the previous page. The animation hasn't finished yet. However, I've stopped the root's animation, which is why the root page has suddenly appeared. That's why you can see the second page, but the title is still the old one. If I debug it now, you'll see that ultimately the title will appear like this. Clear? So you've understood. So in this way, we're able to select individual items. Now what we'll look at is something a bit more in depth, and we'll actually create a new animation. That is, when this image moves from this page to that page, this small image will ultimately become larger, right? So now we'll understand how we can transition this small image into a larger one and place it there. And in the process of explaining that, we'll get to understand the View Transition API in even more detail. To animate this image, I'm going back to the previous page, and you'll notice that the same image has been used repeatedly there. So let's come here and target this image. If we look here, this is the image, and you can see it has been given an ID called story image. Okay. And when I go to this page, let's see what identifier is there. There, it's given as hero image. Okay. So the names are different in these two places. No problem at all. So what we're going to do here is this. One is the story image. And what's its counterpart? That would be the hero image. Okay. Now I'll select both of these images together and I'll give them a transition name. View transition name, you can give it any name you want. It's totally up to you. Let's say, for example, we name it picture. Let's see what actually happened as a result of doing this. So if I come here now and navigate, yes, there is an animation happening. It's happening separately, but the animation that's happening isn't perfect for us. So to understand this, we'll go a bit deeper now. For that, I'm coming back to this page again and pausing the animation because I'm going to debug. Then I did a reload. And after reloading, I have to do it all over again here, just like before. So I did that and then I navigated here. Okay. So fine. Notice carefully. Right now, the thing is in this particular state. Before that, what I need to do, I see earlier, we had disabled all transition animations for the root. Now I'm going to remove that setting. Okay. All right, fine. Then I'm starting over again, starting completely from scratch. I paused it and now I navigated it. Notice nothing happened at all because of the navigation. Okay. Now in this animation here, I can clearly see that things are happening just like this. See what's happening? If I go ahead and debug this view transition now, if you go there, you'll see that a new group has been created for the picture. And this is that group, okay? This whole thing, the entire group takes up just this much space. And there are two things inside it. First is a view transition image pair. You'll understand in more detail now how view transition actually works. What does image pair mean? View transition takes separate screenshots of the current page and the new page. You're navigating toit groups and captures both separately. If you open it, you'll see one labeled old and one new. What does old mean? It's the page you're on, and new is the page you're about to go to. And this one is the old, and we can see that this one is the new. That means, look, the new one is on top. The new one definitely has a higher Z index, so it's on top. And underneath is the old one. The old one is spread across the whole area, and the new one is smaller, okay? And they're cross-fading over each other. In this way, we can't really debug the thing. We want it to transition smoothly together. To do that, what I'm doing is, since we have these two things, one is, look, it's gone again. The reason is, as soon as you navigate away, immediately this is a debugging issue. So when you navigate away, I actually have to start the thing over. I'm starting here. Now let me open this a bit. I'll go through it all at once this time so that you all can understand better. So look here, one is old and the other is new. I will select both of these, all right? View transition old and the other is view transition new. So let's go ahead and do it. Old, right? Well, that's the picture. Okay, so, and I just copied this. And the picture, that's fine. I selected both of them and I'm turning off the default animation for both. The reason is this crossfade where one is crossfading over the other. I don't want it like that, okay? So I turned off the default animation. And since one is on top of the other, by default, it has an opacity, which is why the one below and the one above don't stay separate. You can see one through the other, which actually looks really bad. That's why what I'm doing is in CSS, I'm just setting the mix blend mode to normal. I paused, applied it. Okay. Now, as you can see, we can see one on top of the other quite clearly. If I open this now and go to the picture, then if I look at both new and old, I can now distinguish and identify them separately. This is my old, which covers the entire area. And this is my new. Okay. Ultimately, when I'm transitioning, you'll see both of them. Look, this is how it's moving. This is the old and this is the new one. Notice my new doesn't cover the whole area. The first thing is this view transition image pair I have actually only includes the specific area. And that's what I need to move like this. So what I want to do is set the height of this, right? For these two elements here, I want to set the height of both of them to 100%. That way one will be on top of the other, clear? So for that, what I'm doing here is just setting the height for these two. 100%. Now, if I go and click, then watch what happens. Let me come back. I'll open this again. Notice carefully, this time the old has moved down, but new is on top. And you can see that this new is now distorted because you reduced the height. So it's not covering the whole thing. So what can we do about this? What we can do is, you see this new here, right? This new, since I've set its height to 100%, it's taking the parent's height. I'll set its object fit. Covering it. Okay. And at the same time, I'm hiding its overflow because when this covers it, it will cover the whole thing just as intended. So for any part that goes outside, I'm setting the overflow to hidden. And at the same time, look at this. I've already specifically targeted the one on my 2 page. When you give a new picture in view transition here, you'll see the effect more clearly. When you go back again, though, we'll have to handle the back part a bit later. So I'll do the back part separately. For now, I'm only considering the 2. So my 2 page has already appeared. See, in the HTML of the 2 page, I've given it an identifier, 2, okay? So what I can do here is I'll just take the identifier of the 2 page, meaning I can target the new specifically for the 2 page only. When I did this with it, now if I watch it again from the very beginning, I played it, paused it, pressed it. Now if we look at the animation, look at this, look at this. Now it's working absolutely beautifully. It's done. Perfect. But there's one thing here. Notice carefully. When you move like this, right, at that time, notice that the border radius around this, it's not there, right? But ultimately, when it moved from here at the very beginning, it becomes square. Have you noticed? It turns into a square. But ours are rounded. And the one I'm going to, right, that one is also ultimately, but when it goes there, the square is being formed. See, this rounded shape is being created in this case. It's being created later. And ultimately, finally, it's formed. But what I want is, as soon as it transitions, it should already have the rounded shape. The new one should carry the rounded shape. So if I go here, notice carefully, for the story hero image, I have a border. I've set it with a radius, okay? So what I'm doing is coming all the way down. This thing we have here, the new one we have, that new, in fact, I can do it for both in this case. I've set the border radius for this one. So what will happen is it will look a bit more perfect, okay? So I went over here. Then I paused for a moment again, went here, and look at this. Now, see, it's obviously progressing just like the new one. Clear? So you got some idea now. The animation is truly, absolutely perfect, so you can understand that I actually have to tweak it individually. It will depend on my UI. It will depend on my structure. But by debugging it here, we've managed to get it looking this good. Now, our task is to work on the back case. When we go to the back, right? Now, I'm pressing the boss again. And when I go to the back, notice carefully, the situation is actually really quite bad. When we go to the back, this is how things are happening. Okay? So now we will fix this. So if we come here and if we, again, go into our picture, then now the old is actually the one where I am on the 2 page, and the one I'm going to the from page, that is now on top, right? This is now my new, which is actually my previous from page. So this new one, and this is my old one, okay? Both of these are actually in a distorted state. So how can we solve this? What we'll simply do now is I'm copying this thing because that's exactly what I targeted the new state of the 2 page. Now I'm specifically targeting the new of the from page. And what I can simply do then is just use object fit for this. Then I paused again, right? Now I press back, okay? See, now the distortion is gone. See that? But now there's a small problem. Notice carefully. Look here, from this part, the lower part, right? This lower part, you can see it's overlapping, it's visible, and you can clearly notice it. So if we go to the old of this, sorry, this is for the title. If we go to the old picture, look here. In the picture, this is the new and this is the old in the picture, right? The bigger one is the old at the bottom. I want that extra part that's there. That extra part should not be there, okay? So we can target that. So we can target it, the one that's old on the from page, the one called from view transition old. So what we can do here is set the overflow property to hidden, okay? And at the same time, since we're going back to the previous one, I also want to apply the border radius that was around the previous from page. So the border radius, there's actually a border radius all around on every side. So it was 20 pixels. So I set it to 20 pixels, okay? Now, if we come here, I reloaded the page and I pause it right here. Then I went here and notice that now it has actually taken the shape. See, still our problem hasn't been solved yet because we made a small mistake, which is that we set the overflow to hidden for the form, fine, but we didn't set the object fit property. Object fit, right? The object fit property here will be set to cover, as you can see, okay? When I set it to cover, now if I reload the page, then I go here and pause it for a moment. After that, I go back, then see, yes. Now, the thing is absolutely perfect. Absolutely perfect. But you can still see that the top part isn't rounded. It's only rounded at the bottom, right? So what I need to do is I've actually put the border radius in the wrong place. It shouldn't be in new. Here it's on old, right? So now we'll see that everything is perfect. Then I went back. This now look okay. Look at this. Now see how nicely it's rounded here? So now the shape I ultimately want to achieve matches perfectly with this one. Okay. So if we quickly check, amazing. All right, now let's look at a few small things. Even after making these work in our UI animation is a really boring task. You have to do it patiently, step by step. Whether it's video editing or web page animation, here as we're working, we're noticing a small thing that is, if we pause, notice carefully, the title we have is actually a bit problematic. Just take a look. Look, when the title is moving, you can see that my stories and the discovery, meaning the page that's about to appear, actually overlapping, right? And that's what we're seeing here. So if we target this and if we go to the title, we can see two screenshots of our title. This one is new, meaning the one that's about to appear, the view transition new, which is discovery, and the other one is old, right? So I'll simply target my old one by targeting this old one. If I just set its opacity to 0, that should do the trick. Let me write down fine tuning. Fine tuning. And here, what we'll mainly target, let me copy it from here. This is my view transition, right? For example, let's say it's this one. Here, instead of my picture, there will actually be the title. And the view transition is not new. This is the view transition called old. And in the case of the title, we will always set the opacity of old to 0. If I do this now, then if I reload, pause, and then animate, this is exactly what will happen. You'll see now it's working. When you look quickly, there won't be any more overlapping. You'll see everything works smoothly. So if I go here, this, clear? So that overlapping issue is gone now. I just did a little fine tuning, that's all. So in this way, you can go back and forth. And since you can now select each element, you can fine tune them one by one like this. Now we'll do another fine tuning. When we move from this page to that page, notice that our image here, on top, there's a black overlay that's appearing abruptly. I mean, kind of like, look here, I went here, then came here. The image transitions in nicely, but this overlay on top of the image, a darker overlay, that's where the text is as well. And those texts are also popping in abruptly, which looks bad. So we're going to try to solve this issue. So in that case, think about it if we inspect this a bit in our dev tools. Here we can see there's an overlay placed on the image, and I have intentionally given it an identifier called overlay. All our text and content are inside this overlay. What I want is that when I come to this page from the previous page, this overlay should appear with a nice transition animation. By default, on the previous page, this overlay is not present. Notice there's no overlay here. If you move your mouse, something appears. But that's another matter. You won't perform the transition while hovering your mouse. When you go from here to there, there's no overlay on this page. Until now, everything we've done involved transitioning elements that exist on both pages. On both pages, there's a counterpart. But now we can see that there's something that isn't on this page. However, we want to transition to that page and bring it there, right? So we want to transition from nothing to something, and that too can be done using view transitions. So let's take a look at that, and then you get an idea about this as well. Without saying anything else at first, let's target the overlay first. Okay, and let's give it a name. View transition name, overlay. So what happened? This allows us to control the animation separately. Now that we've set this up, let's take a look at what happened here. So I paused the animation here and clicked here. Then we open this, and as you can see, something called overlay has appeared. And if we go through the transition a bit, right? Next, we see this is the overlay. And notice that in this overlay, within the image pair, there is only new. Now, there is no old. Why is that? On your previous page, from page, there was nothing to screenshot. So it couldn't find any overlay item here. It will find it on the new page. That new is this one. It was able to take screenshots from the new page. So this is a view transition new. So there is no from here. And when we go back, what will be there? Only old, and then there won't be any new, right? Simple matter. So we will target this element and we want to bring it in with an animation. So we can define any CSS animation. So a simple thing could be that the overlay comes in with a nice fade-in animation. Suppose it comes from bottom to top, right? If you want to define this animation, what do? We define a custom keyframe animation. So we take keyframes, right? Let's name the animation fade in. What will happen? For fade in, what happens? From its opacity, let's say it starts from 0. And since it will come from the bottom up, it will generally stay a bit lower in the area. So what we can do is simply translate Y, and let's say that's about 50 pixels, just as an example, okay? And in the case of fade out, what we do is we turn the fade in into a fade out. For fade out, what do we simply need to do? Opacity 0 means that it will just fade out afterwards. That is, the opacity will become 0. So we have defined 2 animations. Now, what we can do is, for our overlay view transition, as we saw, there is only new there. So view, transition, new. We targeted the overlay, and what can we do there? Well, we can definitely add an animation to it. For example, we can apply our fade in animation to this overlay. So let's say I set it to 250 milliseconds, just to make it feel a bit snappier and smoother. And then I use a cubic Bezier. Let's take cubic Bezier example. 0.3, 1. In the use and understanding of animation, we want to apply animation in the direction of the board. We want to add a fade in animation. Right, so let's do this. And suppose we add a slight animation delay. Now, why exactly are we adding an animation delay here? It's because our crossfading needs to finish first, but we've set a delay of 0.5 seconds, a duration, so I added an animation delay so that this actually starts after that 0.5 seconds has passed. And in the same way, I copied this as well. And in the case of old, meaning when it fades out, when you go back, when we return to the previous page, we just make it old. In that case, I don't need an animation delay. It will just fade out, right? And suppose I set a very fast fade out. So I set it to 50 milliseconds. And let's say I change these values a bit. All right. Okay. So now for both the new and the old view transitions, we've actually added a really nice and smooth transition effect. Now, if we go to our page and take a look at a demo.js, see there's a beautiful, subtle fade in animation happening. And if we go back again, you can notice the effect as well. Yes, it's fading out nicely. See, when I go back, it gradually fades out like this. Clear? So I hope you understood. Now, let's pause for a moment and check if any fine-tuning is needed. This step is a must when working with view transitions. That's why I'm showing it repeatedly. So here, I chose the animation, and notice carefully when I'm doing the animation here. Yes, look here. While making this animation, I don't know if you can see it in the video, but I can see it. What's happening is that there's an overlay underneath. See, there's an overflow happening below. The black area that's appearing, the overlay that's coming up, is actually coming over the top. So you can see there's an overflow happening below. So let's solve this right now. If we look here, the overlay, the group, here this is the group, see? Yes? So if we just select this group, the view transition group overlay, if we just really select the whole thing, I selected the entire group, and I'm just here right now. I've set the overflow to hidden, okay? So my fine tuning is now completely done. Now, if we pause it again and then click on it, and if we animate it now, look at this. Now, see that issue is no longer there? Yes, it's overflowing nicely now, okay? And when it goes away, there's really no problem at all. It fades out smoothly. So perfect. Ultimately, it's nothing complicated. We just need to understand the selectors. We're simply getting small snapshots of the previous and next states. Really, we are selecting them, we'll grab those, and within those, we can apply our CSS animations as we wish using whatever CSS syntax we know. We will style them accordingly, we'll animate them, that's it. Up until now, what we've seen is how the view transition API is used in the context of cross-document or multi-page applications, which was never natively possible before. Now, for single-page applications, we're about to see all those single-page applications already exist. The view transition API is a recent addition. Even before the view transition API, in the case of single-page applications, by using various tricks with JavaScript, we've actually tried to create animations in single-page scenarios. But now, with view transitions, we can natively and very simply implement transitions even in single-page applications. So let's quickly take a look at that. So regarding the interaction that happens here when we click on the New Story button, the work that we did, or rather, that was done, I mentioned at the beginning of the video that I would come back to this topic. Now, we're going to animate this interaction using view transitions. First, let me quickly show you. This is a simple DOM operation, but let me show you exactly how it was done. Here, if you click on the new story button, you'll see that I've specifically targeted this button and added an event listener to its on-click event. And what does that listener ultimately do? It creates the card and simply injects it into the DOM. So let's take a look at that code. If we go to our script, JS file, this script, JS file is actually attached to the bottom of the form page, as you can see. So within this script, JS file, we don't have any more CSS work left to do. Now we'll do the animation in JS. Notice here, mainly, I've selected the new story button first using the DOM. Then in its click listener, what did we do first? So what we're going to do is we have the storyboarding container and we're going to push a new item into it. What have we done for that? First, I grabbed the container for this. Then I dynamically generated a new card. So to generate a new card, I wrote a separate function called addStoryCard. And for that function, I passed all the necessary information required to create the card as an object parameter. Inside this addStoryCard function, we receive that data. And here, simply using the DOM, we created a story card like this. So what did we do to make that? First, we take an existing card C, any card here eyes. We actually selected it using a query selector. But we know that the query selector will only get one story card, even though there are many story cards here. Since I used the query selector, naturally the first one got selected. After selecting it, we just cloned this template card. By cloning, we made a copy of it. Then, by updating that copy, we created a new card. See, we placed the image. The information for this image came from the data. We placed the image, the tag, title, description, meaning the tag, title, and description of the story card, whatever is there. And if you go inside the description and other things inside it, I added all of those. Ultimately, from here, I returned the new card. Simple DOM operation. So after adding the card, we just appended it as a child to the container. Clear? It's simple. This appended child is actually the main task. We really need to make the transition, right? What should we do and how can we do it? Now, we can't write any CSS here. We have to do this using JavaScript, but that's not a problem. With JavaScript, we can dynamically set the style property of any element. First of all, the new card that we have, meaning this is our DOM node. So for this new card, we need to enable the view transition API. For this new card, we need to give it a transition, meaning a view transition name. Specifically, what we did earlier in CSS was just select the tag and then set its view transition name property. We're going to do that same thing dynamically using JavaScript. So I have the card here, the new card. So what can we do with this new card? When we use style dot to set any CSS property with JavaScript, what we actually have to do is write the CSS property names in camel case. Previously, we used to write them like this, right? Let's take a look. View. We used to set the transition name like this, right? But as you might have noticed, when we set any CSS property using JavaScript, all the hyphens are removed and the first letter of each word becomes uppercase. So in this case, this is the property that we actually want to set. So let's say we give this a name. Let's just go ahead and call it the targeted card. All right. So this now becomes my very first, I have now officially given a name to this view transition. Now this task we have, when a view transition is actually happening, this specific task really needs to be completed. If you want to accomplish that task in JavaScript, then essentially what I have to do is document.startView. They have given us a function called transition. It's a JavaScript API. And it receives a callback function, right? This callback function is async, which I'll explain in a moment because the animation will take some time to complete. So since the animation is asynchronous, this is why the callback function is async. If I specify the action inside this callback function, it means that by doing so, it understands what you want to do. This place, meaning this task, you want to transition it. By using view transition, the callback function you provide inside will be executed as a transition. The same thing you are doing with CSS is happening here as well. Clear? So when I do this, what happens is now my transition will occur. Now, if we go here, we should already be able to see it. Look here, this is a small but beautiful transition. See, the transition is smooth now. Yes, if we come here, notice, see there, it's coming in slowly with a crossfade. The process is the same. Clear? I hope you understand. Now we'll do a little fine tuning. Usually, since the view transition already happened, since this is async, to understand that C, this is async, which means it will finish, right? So if we want, we can track when it finishes to check if the animation has ended. Suppose I gave this a name. Let's say transition is equal to this. What we can do is await. Transition.finish means I waited until it finished. Asynchronous means I waited. So I turned on the view transition for this transition. Once the work is done, I will finish it. For that, what I will do is the property I set for the view transition name, there is no such thing as start view transition or stop view transition. If you want to stop it, what you simply need to do is set the transition name property that you had set earlier to null. That's it. The transition is now complete. So this is kind of like my version of garbage collection, or you could say a kind of fine-tuning once you're done with the task. You close it, because if you keep the transition on after the task is finished, it doesn't actually close. That's why we set it to null. So this is just that the view transition API we use with CSS. We did the same thing with JavaScript, clear? Now, finally, if you search for the view transition API on Google, you'll find the MDN documentation, yes? And there it's explained very nicely and clearly, just like I did. In fact, I made an example from there in my own way. You'll find many more examples here. And you can also see the browser compatibility details here as well. Not all browsers will support everything. For example, as you can see here, Firefox has absolutely no support for the view transition API, not even on Firefox for Android. So you need to keep this in mind. Although most other major browsers do support it, you should be aware that Firefox still does not support it. But in the future, it'll definitely come up. So make sure to go through this documentation at least once, and then things will become even clearer to you. There are some examples given here. And of course, you can search the internet to find more and use various features of the view transition API to create amazing native animations without using any third-party library. I hope you enjoyed today's tutorial. We'll meet again in another tutorial where we'll learn something more amazing and new. See you in another video. Take care.